You can't make lives better without changing how things work, and that starts with seeing a better way. StoneEagle pioneered a new path through the F&I process. Then we unified the industry with data driving innovation across the board. Making lives better isn't just a slogan, it's our promise, guiding every design and customer touchpoint. We build solutions that tackle the industry's toughest challenges, improving efficiency, deepening insights, and fueling growth. StoneEagle, making lives better.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another ASOTU Edge webinar. Today we're talking about driving performance with high octane data, and joining us is going to be Cindy Allen, CEO of StoneEagle. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to her and Kyle to get started. Y'all are going to enjoy this one.
Oh my goodness, thank you. And I'm excited today because I get to sit with what I would call a new friend. We got to have Cindy on an Auto Collabs episode, a podcast with myself, Paul J. Daly, and Michael Cirillo. And I found out that she's a bit of a data nerd that loves to talk about data. So I can't wait to get into that. And honestly, right now, the ebb and flow of profitability, of pricing, of F&I, of volume of sales is so dynamic amidst tariff talks and everything going on with affordability in the economy, interest rate talks, that I think that pulling out insights from trend data is going to be really important. So don't hear me talk anymore. Let's go ahead and bring Cindy in. All right, Cindy, welcome to our quick shot, fast as you can get it. We're not going to be able to talk too long. ASOTU Edge webinars. How are you doing today?
Hey, Kyle, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing amazing. All right, before we get started, give us a little background on StoneEagle. I actually want you to give me like the early story real quick, and then fast forward very quickly to what you all are doing today.
So early days, we created admin systems that support F&I product providers, that took us into dealers, that showed us lots of pain points, that gave us the opportunity to then kind of figure out, this is crazy. Why does it work this way? How do we, provide some things that make it better? And fast forward, almost 4 decades later, we have the privilege of serving on a direct basis about 9,000 dealers that we actually touch and integrate with directly. And that's in what we call our retail segment. We have kind of 2 big parts of the business. One is that those enterprise systems I mentioned, and the other one is what we call retail. It's where we're directly touching, supporting, and integrating to dealers. And in that segment, we offer the solution called Metrics, and that's where we integrate to about 9,000 dealers. We also offer and serve dealerships in the service drive. And so we support with our pencil wrench offering, which is all about helping automate the process of creating great stories in the repair order so that consumers can understand it. We offer metrics reporting there as well out of the service drive. So that's what we do there in that universe. And in our enterprise universe, we power those systems that when you call to have a claim taken on a VSC or a dent and ding or tire and wheel, those providers are actually signing into our systems, and they're looking up all of your contract information, and they're actually also powering everything that's needed to sell the F&I products up front. So the rating and contracting and all that. So those are a universe of technology, but kind of as a company, we always say we're here to make lives better. And we like to do that.
I can get on that. That's good. Yeah.
By kind of underpinning it with great technology that sort of connects all the dots. From consumer through to the dealer, through to the agents and the people in the field that are supporting it, all the way to the product providers. And then kind of like if you pivot it on its side, we're also touching a lot of other players in the industry and kind of helping to support the ecosystem. So in a nutshell, that's my super quick version of who we are.
That's a really great quick version. I feel like you're well practiced on that. When I talk to, there's probably, I don't know, between 10 and 15 companies in the auto industry that, because of the width at which they've been able to connect with end users, they have access to a plethora of data. And with great power comes great responsibility, right? Because and so we've heard that, because when you have that much access to data, you have a real opportunity to drive change, drive results, and give actionable insights on that data. How have you, as the company's grown, thought about the data side of the business and how to make that something that is almost productizable into the end user?
First of all, we kind of care guard with a vengeance how we think about data, because at the end
Sure.
of the day, you wouldn't want your personal information or anything out there for the whole world to see. Neither would dealers, neither would our product providers. So we have a real stewardship perspective on caring for the data itself. When we
Amazing.
think about then the flip side of, well, how do we make things better by leveraging data? We think of it in terms of really productizing the insights that we can get because we process so many deals. If you think about how many times you actually start a deal in a dealership, that's more than you actually close. And when we think about
Oh,
those
yeah.
transactions coming through, what can we learn from that? So when we think about productization, we think about really looking at the action reaction. This consumer is like this vehicle is like that. And if we approach this conversation in a way that's driving value for the consumer to protect their products, then what are our outcomes? So that's what, when we think about productizing data, it's about really using the process of analyzing data to create insights that are valuable, and that are unique and created specifically for the audience that is wanting to draw those insights out. It might be something totally different if I'm a dealer versus a field agent versus maybe a lender, or maybe I'm a credit bureau, or those different audiences require something different. So that's how we think about data in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, that you said something, you passed over it really quickly, but I think it's really important because as someone that's very close to the deal, right? And the structure of the deal, if let's just say, I think over the past however many years, and we'll probably get a little bit to this in just a second, but over the past 4 or 5 years, the average dealership, I think the NADA studies are selling about 110 vehicles as a franchise store. If you look at your 9,000 stores, that's 990,000 vehicle transactions a month. If you take that and actually extrapolate that a little bit deeper, the average close ratio of a franchise retail dealership is 30% of people in the showroom. That's a potential for up to 3.3 million transactions attempted, that you're looking at the data and what's happening on with it. So what are we learning right now? Because I really want to get right into it, because if I know anything, the 2024, oh no, things are falling, to, oh, March is wonderful because of tariffs, to what's happening now because of political constructs, is it's this constant roller coaster. So what about right now is really important to you as you're looking into the data?
Can I actually just show you some data?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. So we like to think of this as the one true source of data. I always call it high octane fuel, because when you think about what you're using, what you're putting in your car, the more refined it is, the better the outcome, the better performance you get. And so I
Yeah.
like to think of great quality data as high octane data. And so let's look at some snapshots real quick. So one of the things that I really like to do is go, okay, in the universe of how things are just seasonal, right? What makes sense to look at comparatives? And so this is just a little snapshot. It's kind of showing you year over year. But what's really, really great, I think, about insights that we're seeing is just, you said it. We have a tendency to, in our gut, think, oh my gosh, because of all the headwinds that are hitting us from every direction, either the sky is falling or it's the best thing that's ever been and will never be this good again, right? Like those are the kind of extremes we
Right.
have a tendency to think of. And so there are some really key things. We call them little snapshots here that we like to watch, but these are just like the tip of the iceberg when you think about the kind of insights. And so I'd like to dive in a little bit. Like the engine, I think, behind our industry is obviously just sell the car first. You got to sell the car, and then you can kind of add on to it so many other things. And so let's dive in here just a little bit deeper. Can you, I've got another snapshot if you can move forward here, and just let's talk about that, the deals per dealer. And when I see this, the first thing my eyes jump to is that purple line. And oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah, right. Like it looks so much bigger, even if you don't pay attention to any of the numbers, the months down below, it just looks so much bigger. And it is. And what we can see in this is so many people were saying, oh man, March is amazing. Just like you said, March is amazing. It's got to be the tariffs. And people are, just rushing to buy in advance of tariffs hitting us. And what we see here is actually their stronger April performance as well. And so it's not just about getting in front of tariffs. It's actually, we're seeing some really great overall performance in the industry just at buying cars. And, if you look backwards, if you think backwards, that great, I call it the big boom on the other side of COVID, like where we had the pent up demand and then bam. And you kind of look at this in the scope of that. Look where we are. I mean, we are halfway up to what we consider like the best days in auto sales in a very long time. And like I said, we're almost 4 decades in tracking this data. And so I can tell you, these numbers are impressive. And where it's going here, a lot of times you're like, oh, well, April wasn't as big as March. Well, it never is. But look where we are compared to the average April. We are outperforming things in a really strong way. And so when we talk then, what's next? You talk about these kind of units, but now let's talk dollars. What's the impact on overall? Look at that green arrow. Like this is exciting. And when we think PVR.
And this we're looking at PVR. Is this total PVR or this is just F&I PVR?
F&I PVR. Okay. And so when we think about where that's headed here, and I've got some insights on total, what we're doing from a total revenue perspective too, but I just want to highlight this because look at that, just strong month over month. And we think cyclical, almost always you have a slightly softer April than you do in March. It's just kind of our industry trend. Not so in April. So the idea of, we had a huge March because of tariffs and, things are softening because yes, our units came down a little bit in April, but that's totally normal. But look what's happening in PVR. We didn't come down.
What's so interesting to me on that actually, Cindy, is the fact that we haven't seen a move in interest rates. We have plenty of consumer affordability, it seems like, still in the marketplace. And even more importantly, we're seeing a lot more subvented interest rates from manufacturers. And so to see F&I PVR being increased over a time where more subvented interest rates are happening in the market, which lowers your reserve in the bank, looks like things are trending toward product penetration, right?
Yes, it's exactly right. And what we're seeing is just growth. One of the things, and we don't have, okay, guys, when I typically talk about this, I've got like 120-ish different charts and graphs. I mean, I'm like the ultimate data nerd. It's awful. So I won't take us down the rabbit hole too far, but I will tell you, when we think about F&I products, we typically think the big guys, VSC and Gap, and that's driving big revenue from an F&I product perspective. And when we look at our data, it's more than just that. Not only have those two products continued to increase in being able to drive profit for our dealers, but also our product providers are bringing out more and more other products. Those supportive things, we kind of think of them as ancillary products in F&I.
Right.
You take all that and you add it to what's happening in the reserve side, and we just have great growth overall. And one of the ways that we like to look at it is not only looking at sort of what's happening from an F&I revenue perspective, but also compounding that. And when you kind of take a look at then what I mean by compounding it, take a look at those number of vehicles that are being sold. That's growing like crazy. Zoom out and look at the F&I PVR, and let's look at what it's doing for the dealers overall. Oh, great. Good prompt, man. So look at the purple line here. We are talking about the average, on average, how much revenue is being driven for the dealer out
Whoa.
itself. And remember, we had the gold line in the top that was talking about, hey, here was the crazy boom post COVID on the number of units. Look where we are on total F&I income compared to what we were doing in the giant boom. We are having better months now than we have ever had. And I'm just so excited because as we dig into the 120 different ways that I like to look at all this data, we're just seeing tremendous growth in really not only great individual products, but also in the way that product providers and dealers are working together to pull them into packages that make sense for consumers. And so these creative ways at looking at what's working for the consumer, what does the consumer really need, want, what's important to them, has given them ways to kind of pivot slightly, dimension how they provide their products to the consumer, and drive something that clearly consumers are appreciating and buying. So
Do you think that's, it sounds like
an automotive, right?
yeah, you just pointed to like packaging, right, is a great opportunity for driving these types of results, because I think if you look across the industry, it's clear that that on average the results are up, but I'm sure some are seeing much higher growth than others that may be feeling the impact of what they would say are headwinds, even though we're not seeing it broadly in the industry. But what are like one or two or three of the ways, besides packaging, just like getting your packaging and even like, in software, we talk about like, product packaging and product marketing as a package, but how that plus one or two other things might you be seeing dealerships progress in this growth? Like, what's the reasoning?
In olden days, when you didn't have a lot of data sophistication, you would just go for selling the biggest thing that you could sell because you're
Right.
trying to drive profit, right? Like you're just, hey, let's give them the super duper gold platinum package. Let's just, offer that. And what they're finding is, if you can actually zero in to what is important to at what level of spend that consumer can afford, you're getting a lot better uptick. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. You can still say, okay, I want to provide the premium, platinum, gold, whatever your top line is. But to make it more affordable, what if I actually play with the term of the service contract in order to zero in, the 4 or 5 years that consumer's actually going to keep the car versus the 7 or 8 that I was trying to sell because I was just trying to boost revenue in the front end, and that drives penetration up. And so there's things like that are helping drive the purchase of these things, not because I call it the platinum rule, right?
Yeah.
It's like just sell according to what your buyer is actually wanting, and that's just driving and having the visibility of knowing what that is for a given type of consumer who buys a different given type of car. I think is where data comes in to support F&I professionals in how to have that conversation.
Yeah, so it's not just like, yes, do multi-product packaging. It's multi-product packaging with relevant products, terms, packages, product types per client on an individualized basis, instead of like, oh, we're going to pitch everything to everyone every time, which should be the reality. But like, what's the everything? What's that everyone need is a super important question. And you all are, obviously in the product, and I know we've got a couple more data slides, but in what you guys are doing are trying to serve that data a bit more real time, right, to F&I professionals as they have to make these decisions kind of on the fly with many customers on a Saturday and things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think the real-time information is something that's really critical. And when you're just trying to look backwards at big piles of data, and you're not actually having it at the moment when you need it to help guide that conversation with consumer, you're just bogged down in analysis all the time versus having tools that serve that up for you. And I think that's one of the most important ways to think about leveraging real-time data, is making sure you're looking for partners that can actually integrate that into their process and bring it to you at the moment that you need it. And in some situations, you may say, hey, I don't want that interruption in the middle of this flow of a conversation. And in other times, you may say, hey, yeah, that's ideal for me. But no matter what, like making sure when we think real time, it's not just in the middle of that conversation. It's also, hey, what's happening so far this month? Did something big happen in our economy that shifted a perspective that meant that I need to now front load with a different kind of product first when I talk to the consumer about this other thing, because it's more important. 0% financing, as an example, across that you get a 6 months no payment. Things like that just kind of compound the need for a gap solution, right? And different things like that. And those kind of happen. And when they happen, recognizing it and being able to make sure that you're double checking and looking at the data and the results, and then adjusting appropriately in the F&I office is so critical.
I can't remember who said it, but I heard someone, or maybe I was in conversation with someone that talked about buying maintenance and F&I as like buying the dip right now, right? It's like, oh, if all these tariffs are coming and we're going to see potentially, specifically on parts, right? Parts and even maybe labor growth over the next 2 to 3 years, that you can kind of like buy at the low point when F&I contracts or maintenance lock you into pre-planned pricing. And so that talk track in a finance conversation with a consumer is super relevant right now. Hey, protect yourself against increased pricing in the service lane, in the warranty lane, so that you don't have to worry about those increased price if tariffs or things like that come down the pipe, right?
So that's just so true. And it goes all the way through to things as simple as tire and wheel. When you think about the kind of coverage you're getting there as well, it's protecting the consumer in so many different ways. And it is protecting them at today's rates.
Yep, exactly. So always when I was at the store, we were always protecting against profit centers, maintaining their profitability, right? When I buy a used car, make sure that service and sales both get their profitability, that one doesn't dip into the other. When I sell a car, make sure the front and the back gross are protected so that one's not robbing from the other. Are we seeing, we're seeing all this growth in the finance side of things. Are we seeing similar growth or matched profitability around the house, or is one kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Interest rates, inventory, lots of things had a big impact on front gross over the past 2 years. And we just saw this, I would call it kind of like the race to the bottom on the front gross side of things, and what we're actually making on the cars. And I was actually having a conversation with a couple of our different OEM partners, and their perspective was, I think we may end up going back to the days where on a new vehicle, you just expected to make little to nothing on the vehicle itself. And I kept saying, I just don't think that's the case. I think that we have figured out we don't have to take a hit on the front end, on the vehicle itself. We actually do deserve to make money on the car. And we did hit what I consider the bottom. Our bottom there was in December of 2024. And since then we've had, you can see it right here, a 72% increase in the front revenue that we're driving on the car itself. I mean, just phenomenal. And so when we think about that, we were looking at that big spike that, hey, we're making better numbers in total dealership F&I revenue, and as a whole, front gross is contributing a lot on its side as well. So just phenomenal growth in all areas in the front of the house. So exciting to see.
That is really exciting to see. I'm just pumped for the summer, because we know that the summer is normally better than April. And if I can kind of like crystal ball it, we start to see inventory levels get right into shape, which is where you get the best profitability for dealers. And we're seeing some of the tariffs be put off another 90 days. There's still question marks around that type of stuff. So it's going to continue to drive consumer behavior. The last thing that I want to tap into is whenever we look at big data, And the conversation always right now is trending to how can AI leverage big data to make decisions or support decision making. When you all are thinking about integrating artificial intelligence into the learning models, into escalating insights into a user interface, where are you plugging that in so that it can be super effective?
Oh my goodness. Well, we have a lot of amazing partners that are leveraging data to drive AI insights. And I think one of the big things is, and this is where that kind of high octane, conversation up there comes from, is you can give sort of surface level data to your AI models. Or plug them into the technologies that you're using, and the outcomes are only going to be as effective as the fuel that you're putting into it. And so as we drive more and more clarity on all the different aspects of a deal in a way that's really structured and clean and consistent all the time, and goes beyond just the typical, a handful of surface levels, but dives into and drills into all those various products, all the different ways that makes and models and trims can fuel information in all different directions, and the consumer. That's what we're diving into. And we're seeing companies that are creating their AI technologies have such a different outcome when they're using much more detailed and structured quality data that includes all these aspects, not just the how much did the car sell for and who did we sell it to and what year, make, model was it, right? When you get into those other aspects, because clearly a good portion of the revenue, and it's nice and solid, we just talked about the front gross, right, is coming from the car itself, but a lot of revenue is being driven from all these other areas that are very nuanced. And providing that then to AI, man, I mean, that the output from that is just so much more effective. And we're seeing it all over the board in lots of different ways that it's being used.
Yeah. And well, when you can figure out what the buyer matrix, particularly, I've got, maybe I've got a young couple buying their first Toyota RAV4. It's this trim model and they have this income capacity. Their distance to the dealership is this. And all of a sudden you can start to structure this like very, very detailed plan that gets more yeses and more products per deal, which keeps the dealer stickier to the consumer as opposed to being just connected via one kind of inroad. And so I saw that on that first slide where products per deal are ticking up. And I think that coupled with increased F&I profitability will keep the dealer super sticky for the client. And in a time where we're seeing retention levels at an all-time low, both brand loyal and dealer level, we can start to see increased retention just due to the F&I department's work. If there was one thing that you would encourage F&I departments, general managers, F&I directors to really focus in on as we head into the summer months, where would you put a big amount of focus to verify and ensure that profitability is maintained as we go into these summer months?
Yeah, I think it's really on, we talk about, you said it earlier, just throw every product at every person when they walk in the door, but being smart, it's the other AI is what I call it. Instead of just artificial intelligence, the actual intelligence, as a human, to take a moment and to recognize who's about to walk into the door and to think through and look at not just your gut instinct, but actually looking at data that tells you what's going to be the most desirable and most needed by that consumer who's walking in the front door, and then and really customizing your conversation around that. I think that's the best thing that we can do. And to also be very open to the use of and start to get comfortable with these technologies that are being created that will do that, a lot of that for you. But artificial, I don't think is ever going to replace actual when we talk about AI, right? So I think it's the balance. It's the bots and the beings that are required for this magic as people walk in the door and having the opportunity to have a great buying experience because you are cognizant of me. Man, that is awesome. And it's things we think really detailed, but also the big picture is important too. Hey, I'm in Arizona. I'm not in North Dakota, and so the things that I need are just fundamentally different. And so the giant models don't apply across the board either, right? So So that's where that kind of actual, in combination with the artificial intelligence, creates something that I think is just really special. So going into the summer, I'd say, we think about our experience that we want when we walk in the door. Well, it's not about what you want. It's about what that consumer wants when they walk in the door. That platinum experience for something that's really relevant to them.
That's awesome. Well, Cindy, I loved digging into the data. I think it's an encouraging position to take right now, to say, hey, look, it's not doom and gloom. Things are up. Continue to keep that spirit high all the way through the dealership, all the way from hello to goodbye, rolling those two wheels off across the curb, because there's profitability, and we can maintain and even increase that as we care more for customers and think more relevantly on exactly what they need. Cindy, you've been an absolute pleasure to hang out with. And thank you for giving us a bit of high octane data to drive some performance for our F&I departments today.
Thank you so much, Kyle. It's been great to be here.
You can't make lives better without changing how things work, and that starts with seeing a better way. StoneEagle pioneered a new path through the F&I process. Then we unified the industry with data driving innovation across the board. Making lives better isn't just a slogan, it's our promise, guiding every design and customer touchpoint. We build solutions that tackle the industry's toughest challenges, improving efficiency, deepening insights, and fueling growth. StoneEagle, making lives better.
All right, everyone, that is a wrap. If you would like to watch this again or share it with a friend, you can go ahead and go to our website, ASOTU.com, click on media, drop down to webinars, and share it away. You can also catch it on our LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.